It's another episode of The Next Fix. We've got Jossette with us here today. Jossette and we met in a very unique fashion. And there was such a beautiful part of how we actually began talking to each other. And I'll dive into that a little bit later. But first, I want to welcome Jossette to the show. Welcome. I know this.
Thank you, Ryan.
She has shared this is her first podcast. And I kind of drug her into it. So everybody be very kind. So I'm excited to hear all about your story. A real quick note for the listeners is that, this being her first podcast, that she's very proactive. She's a very organized and type A kind of personality. Now I'm filling in a lot of blanks here, but I could be wrong, but I don't think that I'm too wrong. But she had sent me notes and all of these gorgeous notes and ideas about what we're going to talk about. And I was like, oh, that's not how we're going to do it. I'm going to march into this thing ignorant as hell and ask questions. And so the first question I typically ask around these parts is like, all right, Jossette, like I know and I feel strongly that your future is brighter than I can ever imagine, but there's always a genesis, right? There's always the dark night before the sunrise. And so that's what we want to know all about, is that when did things become tough for you? How tough did it get? What did that look like? Tell us when the shit hit the fan.
Thank you, Ryan, for having me here. Yes, and so we connected. I'm living currently with housing insecurity, and I'm waiting for a disability case to get approved. That's very lengthy, but it all started pre-birth, actually. I do carry a lot of...
Hold on. Forgive me, Jossette, but
That's okay.
That sounded like a very fancy way to say that you don't have a home right now.
That is correct. I do not. I live with housing insecurity, but I'm also very blessed and privileged in many ways. The El Paso community has been very supportive. I've been in and out of shelters, but I also have had the luxury of couch surfing, watching people's houses when they travel. And the more people started following me, the more I've had the luxury of an occasional roof and shower and the luxury to contact you.
What a gift. I see that. Well, one, I wasn't trying to say the word homeless or but I was homeless myself. I'd been in shelters. It's not ideal, but here you are smiling. Here you are grateful. And so that's what I was saying is so beautiful about that. But let's make no mistake about it, right? You're waiting on disability and you don't have an address, right? Like there is no, picket fence for you to go home to, and you're not, yeah. And it is glorious that people have come and supported you. And so that part is very cool. But now I rudely interrupted you right before you're about to tell us, you were going to tell us into the deep past about where was the start of some of these issues for?
Yes, so Ryan, I was born in Miami, Florida, and my mother lived with addictions, different types of drugs and alcohol. And so I was given two sides of the story. My mother's side of the story is that I'm the product of rape and abuse. And the side of the story that I believe is my dad's story, which is I'm the product of prostitution and manipulation, which both sides are equally horrible, to be honest. And so...
That's so rough. My gosh, I'm thinking okay, rape and all that, but what's the good side? No, there's just there's a rather rough other side as well. My gosh.
Yeah, there are plenty of good sides, because even though I feel that I truly carry the generational trauma from my past and the gestational trauma, right, of pregnancy, as well as the life hardship of mental health and many events, I was raised in south of France with my paternal family, who loved me and did their best with what they knew. So they made their mistakes, but their intentions were truly to help me. I mostly lived with my paternal grandparents, but I also spent about 4 years in what would be foster care with family, my uncle and my cousins who were close by. And eventually I went back to my grandparents, but my grandfather passed away. I was in boarding school and I was a mess. I was a very difficult child living with a massive reactive attachment disorder, complex PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, and of course, very severe depression. So I failed 2 grades. I was labeled at risk, special ed, and I dropped out of high school at 16 years old.
Wow. Okay. And you went at a blistering pace, which I appreciate.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't say sorry. So, right, there's a myriad of mental health concerns here. What was the
Mhm.
first one though? I'm not super familiar. That was the one I'm the least familiar with, and it was, what was it again?
Reactive attachment disorder, which is the one that really shaped my whole life, unfortunately.
Reactive attachment disorder. Hmm.
Yes. It
Can you make?
generally
Can you?
happens.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's all right.
It generally happens when you take infants away from their mothers and or when there is very early on severe abuse and chaotic circumstances, which was my case because truly the brain develops from gestation up to 7 years old. This is really when your identity develops. So before 3 years old, I don't know how far the abuse went, but I know there was a lot of chaos. And my mother lived with potentially schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. I don't know for sure because all I'm getting is bits and pieces from different people.
Yeah. Wow. This is great. This is a wild start. I mean, it's a godsend that your paternal grandparents were involved. And so I guess what age did you begin living in France? Like, when did that start? Because you started off in Miami,
Yes.
Florida, which is,
Uh-huh. I,
I'm in Florida, so I could tell you that
oh wow.
it's it has its own wrong side of the tracks. Miami does for sure, and it doesn't seem like you were in a high rise on South Beach, right? So I'm imagining you left a pretty rough situation in Miami. But at what age did you end up in France?
I was less than 3 years old, so I think I was about to turn 3 when I ended up in France.
And what a miracle your grandparents were. And so clearly you have a French accent. So how long were you in France for? You said 16, right? Is that
Yes, I was a very rebellious teenager, so I was only there until my heart told me to leave.
okay? So all right, so your heart told you to leave. What does that mean? You hit the road? You ran away?
It wasn't running away because my paternal, my father was in the picture, and my father had understood that I could not be controlled. And the school
Wow.
system had never figured out how to have me collaborate because all they did was punishment. And I was the type of girl that would turn the other cheek, like that's all you got type of thing. So my dad did the best with what he knew, which is I have to be on her side because she's not going to listen to authority. And so he told me, look, you dropped out of high school, which is very rare in France. I have some contacts in Dallas in the United States, but you're really going to be on your own and you don't speak English. You don't have an education. Are you sure you want to do that? So with a backpack and my father's help, I went to Dallas and I worked in a ranch as a cowgirl because the cows don't require you any level of education.
You moved to Dallas, Texas to be a cowgirl at 16.
Yes, I did.
That's so great. So, all right. So farm work, to me, maybe I've got soft hands. I'm not sure, but man, we all know, like everybody knows, being on a farm is not easy. And that's not the type of place where they let you lounge around and kind of like, there's stuff to be done, right? Whether it is, doing something with cows or making your own food or getting your own milk, whatever it is, none of that seems easy to me. And here you are, you're not even an adult yet, right? So, well, quick, odd question. Were you a citizen? Did you have dual citizenship or?
Yes, because I was born in the United States. Remember, I was born in Miami, so I do have double citizenship.
All right, so that part's cool. But does it make the farm any easier? So what the heck was that like? Right? Was part of the deal you had to go to school here in the States?
No, it wasn't. My father understood that I couldn't. I was absolutely so rebellious that the more rules were imposed on me and the more authority, detention didn't scare me, taking away my things didn't scare me. I was an extremely rebellious child. So he understood that the way to get to me was to cooperate with me.
Right. Well, okay,
Yes.
but how did the farm people feel about that, right? Like, cause I mean, I'm sure that they were like, oh, no big deal, sleep in till whenever, right? Like, how did that go?
So this was mostly just with my family. I actually was very collaborative with other people. I was only rebellious with my family and the school system, perhaps until I moved to college. But it was a very hard work. I had to separate longhorned calf to their mother to sell them to the market. And I'm an animal lover, so it was like an added trauma to have to contribute to the cruelty. But I needed a roof, and I had made my choices, very conscious early on choices. So I was a hardworking cowgirl at 16 with big buffed guys. And the only time I got to study really English was the family was Mormon, I believe. And so on Sundays, they took me to their gatherings, and I would study whatever books I would get my hands on. That was my way to learn English.
This is such a wild story. So you're in Dallas, Texas. You're a cowgirl now. You're not an adult, right? By our United States standards, but like you're not an adult, and you are learning English in your spare time with your new now Mormon family. Right. So, well, now what comes next? I just want to know what happens next.
From then, I met a family in that same church who thought it wasn't an adequate job for me. And so they helped me get a job as a babysitter living in with a different family who was very kind. And that family gave me house chores, pet sitting, babysitting. They also paid for my GED, which is how I was able to go to college. I passed the GED, which I was very surprised because I used to be a very bad student. And with that, I started taking ESL classes. I moved to College Station because I was rebellious and I couldn't stay in one spot. And I met my first love, who was from Chihuahua, Mexico, but his family lived in El Paso, Texas. And so whenever he told me, I'm going to move back to El Paso, I didn't even know where that was. And I told my father over the phone, I'm going, which my poor father probably went to cardiac arrest 100 times a month because of me. But I did. And I'm so thankful because El Paso is now my home. I love it.
Hey, so this is your first love. You fall in love with a Mexican gentleman from Chihuahua, right? And so then you go to El Paso. Now, this is just my own perception of El Paso, but it's also kind of a tough town, right? Like, I mean, it's like, I feel like you could always find a set of believers or a set of people with great hearts. But from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like it is kind of close to the border, right? And there is a perception, not one that I have lived, but like one that I feel like I've heard, and I could, again, be very wrong, but border towns are tough, like typically, right? And so I feel that you must have amazingly thick skin, especially you're grinning, you're smiling at this point, right? And so, well, what happened to the first love? Did you dump him?
He dumped me.
He dumped you.
But that's okay. I mean, I feel that everything really happened in my life for a reason. I have faith in this. As far as El Paso goes, I don't know what the reputation is, but my experience, my very lengthy experience, is that we have a lot of humble people from humble backgrounds who are readily willing to help. So people that can barely afford their electric bill, but opening their doors to strangers for a meal. That's why I love it so much, that it's even okay to a certain extent to not see the world the same way. You can still build bonds. So my experience has been wonderful. I mean, I've had traumas because I've gone homeless several times and I have carried my mental health issues, but the population has been very supportive.
Are these mental health concerns showing up for you these days?
So I guess the turn of my mental health for the best was in 2021, but my whole life has been affected deeply by the reactive attachment disorder. I have had a very hard time asking or accepting help from my family members, a lot of pride and ego at play. I cannot deny it. But also this extending to boyfriends and relationship and friendships. So once I build a bond, I can never let go. That is not I'm not exaggerating. I am still deeply attached to my elementary school boyfriend who has no clue, right? And he doesn't speak English. So, hey, Julien, what's up? But the point is that it's very hard for me to build trustworthy bonds and to accept help, but I can also never let them go. To me, even though I was raped, have lived homeless, have drank for a little bit, though I didn't fall into alcoholism. I feel that my biggest trauma has been letting go of ex-boyfriends, which is mad for somebody who's gone through rape, right? But it is
Wow.
what it is. Yeah.
Sure. So how 2021 was, like you said, it was the best, the mental state that you were in at that point was the best that it had been. Do you lend your mental health struggles to the lack of having a home right now? I mean, forgive me for being a little bit maybe too black and white there, but do you lend it? No, that's not what it's about. That's
It contributed. So in 2021, a person that I loved had a very traumatic event, a car crash. And I spent my whole 6 months after that living with the most severe mental health and physical health, because for a couple of years I was having very disabling episodes where I had seizures, loss of eyesight, loss of balance, feeling drunk without drinking, agonizing bone pain. And so I kept on fighting for a diagnosis, but everything was brushed off for complex severe PTSD. So in 2021, to fight for that person, I learned every coping skills there were out there. I listened to every speaker, even though I disagreed politically or in religious perspective, because I understood that everyone had something to teach me that had to help me. So at the time, I was in a PhD program for social justice and education, and I realized that I needed to switch my direction to advocate for my survival, because I was so very sick and the medical system was failing me. It was so disabling. So I made a case to be in health sciences and do the first orthoethnographic dissertation to study my case. And along with that, I had the great privilege of student loans, which gave me a temporary roof. But also that paid for me to obtain my first diagnosis in Mexico, because like you said, that I'm on the border, and my first access to treatment. So my battle was won all the way. And I think that from 2021 to now, and I'm not stopping here, I've had an increasing amount of faith and hope and dedication that everything happens for a reason. And I live such a purposeful life. So now, not knowing where I'm going to sleep next month does not scare me, because I understand I need to be where I'm at to meet the right people at the right time to obtain my dreams.
This is crazy. You are wildly positive, and you have every reason to not be, and yet you make that choice every day, right? And so is that a fact? You don't even know where you're going to live a month from now?
Well, I have a pet sitting job for Christmas, so I know where I'll be during the holidays. But after that, it's really a month-to-month thing. And
Sure.
I'm well enough where I could work, but working has been demonstrated to lead me into a physical relapse, which is not worth risking for me, because
Right.
when the lesions appear, I never know if they're going to be permanent or not. So it's really important for me to find purpose outside of the 8 to 5 schedule, and something that's following my heart. So I'm working on a movie, on books, on so many things.
Right. Right. I mean, sure. If it's not an option for you to go back to ranch work, but to, that they're, especially in the times that we're so gifted to live in, there's no shortage of opportunities that you can, do and be a part of remotely and through the digital age that we're living in. I mean, there's a ton of different opportunities. Are you still in school?
Yes and no, Ryan. So I have my PhD already. I'm very thankful, like I said. But I enrolled into principal certification program, which is going wonderful. I'm loving it because I'm learning about leadership and I have so many dreams. It would take an entire day to tell you about them. But I cannot afford the classes, so I won't be able to register in spring. And I knew this coming in, but I have so much faith that I have a GoFundMe going. And if it doesn't happen, it's because it's not meant to be. And if it happens, great.
Right. Right. Okay. I mean, you're so unique. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, professionally here on this podcast, whatever it may be, even when I was like a bartender in Las Vegas, I've talked to a lot of people, but this is an incredibly unique journey. It's starting from just such a wide, and again, I don't want to try to unpack something that you could never truly understand or know about, but like the whole childhood and the two different stories between your mother and your father, what the heck is that all about? Like, I mean, this is so interesting though, because how we had begun, how we ended up getting connected is something you were doing something that I share as like an advantageous move. You're batting above your league, or that's a phrase, but like you were shooting well above your pay grade, or I'm just trying to say the same thing in different ways, but you were shooting to be amongst the top 0.01% of personal development people on the planet, right? We're talking about a type of person who demands millions of dollars to have an hour of just their undivided attention. And you're like, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to get up there and I want to tell my story. And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, I don't know if I can make that happen, but I can damn sure make this podcast happen. And so the reason why that had pulled at my heartstrings so strongly is that this is something that I had followed, and it is kind of a method that I saw work for me. I managed to, we'll use these metrics because it's easy to see. I was working for $10 an hour. I could not get a job at Dunkin' Donuts. I could not get a position at the grocery store. I couldn't get a job anywhere. And I was struggling. However, in the meantime, in the background, I was just applying at every position that I had no business being a part of. And in that process of shooting for something completely out of my league, by trying and asking for something that I have no business asking for, in time, what resulted is that I became able to have those conversations and demand not just those positions, but also the pay that comes with those positions. But I feel so strongly that when a person just asks for something that they, the normal person would say, what are you talking about? Like, you have no business asking for this type of job or this type of audience or this type of opportunity or stage or any of that, right? But you do it anyway. And then in time, you actually develop and become that person who is most certainly capable of demanding that pay and demanding that position and owning that stage. And so that's why I was so excited to have this conversation with you today, unknowing of like the entire genesis of who you are, right, Jossette? Like, this is crazy town. But now you're currently doing this, right? You're currently just reaching out and seeing about different positions, being involved in different educational programs. What else is going on for you in the here and now?
I am truly envisioning to make a movie and a documentary. So the movie is about my life. So to bring light about mental health and daily struggle with hope without necessarily being meritocratic. But also I want to do that documentary about my health journey because I'm so lucky and privileged in many ways. I was able to get an education, get student loans, cross the border, find the right doctors, which many people don't have the willpower, the energy, and the support that I've had. So I don't know when and how it's going to happen because I don't even have a car and I don't have the means, but I have entirely delusional faith that is needed for this. So I know that sooner or later, I will attract the right people the right way at the perfect time.
It's amazing. Delusional faith. I feel like that is so powerful. It's such a huge, it's so much better than just waiting for everything to just kind of line up, because that just never happens. This is what I always beg people, like, don't wait for a damn thing. Just go and try and screw up like a zillion times. Like, that's even an applicable strategy. Just try and screw up. You're like, well, I'm going to screw this up 3 times. By screwing it up 3 times, the likelihood that you screw it up a 4th is like way lower, meaning that the likelihood of your success is through the roof just on your efforts to go and fail, right? So here you are, delusional faith, right? Now with this movie, how far along are we in development? Do you have a script?
I do have a pitch deck. I have a script for both the movie and I'm learning this from scratch, right? Because I have no experience in any of this. So pitch deck and script, and I'm reaching out to hundreds of people a week because of that delusional faith, with an understanding that, hey, I don't have the money, but I have a story and we can crowdfund. Like if I get the people, the right people behind me, I know it's going to happen, and I'm not afraid of hearing that no. And I guess that's been a great training to get denial over and over and over, because there's a point where you no longer fear it. You just keep on going and keep that vision alive. So it's there, and I'm ready for it whenever.
It's so awesome. It's so awesome. And I feel so very blessed to talk to you at this juncture, right? Because this conversation will be much different a year, 2 years, or whenever that time frame is, like, because I believe that as a result of that delusional faith, that it's going to happen. Have you worked with like manifestation approaches?
Well,
Okay. I can't see what's on that wall. What's going on back there?
yeah, it's all my manifestations every day, every single day I practice. So yes, I visualize, I align the feeling, the vision. I thank God, the universe, whatever people believe in, for the perfect timing, because it's already in my vortex. Yes, absolutely. I'm a high school dropout with a PhD who's lived through a large amount of very severe trouble and traumas that are going to make it into a movie and a show one day. And it's going to be based on that true story. So
Right.
absolutely, it's my survival.
I just, a catch line just kind of hit me. You're a high school dropout with a PhD who was conceived either out of rape or prostitution. It's it's a bit harsh, the last part there, but gosh, it is an element that like makes me like peels my eyes open. Like, what? That's so insane. And good on you for that, right? Good on you for
Thank
that.
you.
Been realizing that manifestation is not just something that you do, practice, or you're into or you read about. No, we're all doing it constantly. We are all manifesting exactly what we have and what's around us. We're doing that, right? And so you can either manifest what you don't want, or you can manifest something that you truly do want and desire. And so having that focus and understanding that it's happening one way or the other, like that's just, I feel that it's incredibly advantageous. However, here's the catchphrase, because somebody that's listening to this would be like, well, why is Jossette homeless? If she's manifesting, she has all this stuff on the wall and she's practicing all this every single day, then how come she doesn't have the movie and show? Well, it's because there is a gap, right? And it's kind of like, I wish I had like a graph, right? I could show you. So there's this curve of your manifestations and your focuses and your practices and your actions, right? And so you could consider it to like a large curve, right? And you're kind of coming up to this precipice, right? And so you're come up here and you're at the height of your feelings and your emotional, expectation is through the roof. And you're like, here it is. And you feel so ready. And you say, well, why the hell is it here? How come I don't have it? Well, simultaneously, when you sit those vibrations into the universe and you start asking for these things and focusing on them, well, there's a delay. And so there's a second curve, and that second curve is out in front of you, and you don't know how far away it is. And it's usually that gap, right? I call it delta T, right? So it's at the crest of the height of your expectation and manifestation focuses, and you're on fire, you're on point, and you're learning, and you're ready. Then reality, right? The universe has to deliver it. Right. So it's on the way. Now that delta T is the time from when you're at the top and you're at the peak and you're ready to rock. And then when the universe actually sends it and the postage is in the mail, right? But it's when it comes. So that gap there, I call it delta T. That is what people, if you don't understand it, you give up. And then you throw your manifestations into the garbage and you say it doesn't work. And it's no, that's not necessarily true. It works. However, we are naturally impatient people. Humans are impatient. And so the bigger and larger the manifestation, usually the longer you've got to wait. So if you want a Hollywood, a blockbuster type movie and you are inviting and attracting those types of people into your life, it might take a little while, right? So that would be my explanation for somebody who's saying, well, what the heck are you talking about? She's manifesting and she doesn't have a place to live. That doesn't make any sense. And it says, to me, it makes all the sense. It just hasn't arrived. But yeah.
Absolutely, Ryan. And also because I have been living with so severe depression, and we're talking about vibration, which goes hand in hand with how we feel about ourselves and the world. This is new to me. I mean, I started this mindset in 2021, and you don't change overnight. You change with little practices, incorporating forgiveness for having not practiced that day, whatever you should have, and incorporating more and more things. So it's a journey and it's a process, but I see now, 5 years later, how worthy the journey has been, because my entire life have struggled with a very deep recurrent depressive disorder, reactive attachment disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, PTSD, and I am not fully cured, but I am. So you understand this because you understand manifestation. What I can tell people that don't understand it so far is that whether or not you believe in it doesn't really matter, because the person I am today for having tried it all is so much better than I've ever been in my life in terms of aspiration, hopes, drive, energy, determination, you name it. I know that I can be all that I want to be, and it's somebody who's going to be successful, healthy, inspiring, and will have a car at some point.
But
And a roof.
right. It's what a glorious journey. And when I see this, right, like, and here we are, where this moment in time, as we're having this conversation, is like, it's that beautiful time that you and even myself, once I see all this kind of coming into the future, right, and I see the movie or whatever may come out of it, and I think back to that time, and I'm like, yeah, I remember that it was, I think that we call it like the good old times, is the struggle in pursuit of what we find so great and grand. And at the end of the day, it is, to your point, it is who we become, right? Not necessarily what we achieve. And so whether or not the actual movie is like shot in the south of France where you're from and all these like ideal and perfect outcomes, that's not the point. And you express that very accurately, is that it's really who you are inside. And so again, as somebody who looks on the surface level of things, it could misconstrue, your efforts as being a failure. And I truly don't agree with that at all. I can see that it's the success is already here in the person that you are and perpetually becoming, right? And that's the other caveat to this thing, is that you can't give up. I had said that just a few minutes ago, is that typically people get to the height of their efforts and their practices and their mantras and their meditations and their manifestations and their exercise, and they think this doesn't work because they're just looking on the outside for all of the evidence. And it's like, if you only knew, right? Like, if you only knew that it's, one, the person that has been crafted as a result of your efforts, and then two, it takes a little time for the stuff to show up, right? Because it's foolish to think that and that's what happened, like with The Secret and all that. It was like, if you just say you want $1 million all day, every day, it's going to like show up. It's just not like that. It's just not, right? But this is, so you're currently house sitting. That's where you're at right now?
Yes, very comfortably. I don't have a bed. I sleep on the floor, but I don't know how to sleep on a bed. So this is my improvised bed with affirmations. My action board, I call it, because we have vision boards. You also need to take action, which is how I reached out to you and hundreds of people, and I won't give up.
Right. Action. Yeah. Because if you don't do anything, and that's kind of going back to when The Secret came out, everybody was like, you just got to think positively. Well, yes, thinking positively is a huge asset in pursuing manifestation. However, it's not enough. You've got to do something. It's very rare that if you just think about somebody calling you, that it's going to happen. Even though
Yeah.
some of the major names in the space, like Bob Proctor and stuff, I think even Brian Tracy, he talks about how he could actually have somebody call him just by thinking about them and all that. And this is kind of the gift of practicing manifestations, is that synchronicities are almost willed, right? It's like, oh man, like I found a dime the other day. This is a great example. I found a dime the other day and I picked it up and I said, you see, it was like I just won the lottery. I was like, and I took that little dime and I was like, I put it and I was like, man, that is awesome. And somebody would probably think that I'm an idiot for doing it.
I used to be one of those people that would say, oh, this is so ridiculous. And that's why I'm so grateful for that turnaround in 2021, because I started realizing that no matter how ridiculous it is, if it cannot hurt, I'm going to try it.
Yeah. It's such a delusional faith, right? Like,
yeah,
it's a gift. Now, you are unable to sleep in a bed? How long have you slept on the
because I've
floor?
been living in and house, in and out of shelters. Actually, my last shelter was very comfortable. We had private rooms and a bed, but even then I couldn't use the bed because I've been used for the past few years of sleeping in the floor, housing insecurity. And so now, even when people offer me a mattress, I'm like, no, because I'm used to it. But I'm also ready for whenever that $1 million movie happens or however it happens, for that fancy bed. I will be flexible in time.
I will laugh if it's a decade from now and the movie comes out and you're like sleeping on a inflatable mattress. I will say, and just to share, like when I was in shelters, and now I'm like thinking back to like when I was in shelters, and for anybody that has been in there, they're all unique. They all have their own sets of challenges. But the one I'm currently remembering was there was 3 shower heads, right? But no shower stalls, right? So it was all these are typically all men or all women. It just makes sense to have it like that. But I'm in the line, all these naked dudes, and I'm sitting there with my soap and I'm like, I'm watching the line, and it's 3 shower heads, no walls, no curtains, no nothing. Like, just hurry up, get in there. The likelihood of you touching another guy, very high. And I get in there and I'm like soaping up and I'm like, and then I get out. And then I remember in that room, the snoring. It was like the snoring was something out of a movie, right? Imagine 60 unhealthy guys in bunk beds. I mean, probably 20% of them snore. It was wild. Like, the snoring was like, it was like epic. It was like a concert almost. Unreal. But yeah, that was, shelter life is, it's a real thing. It's, I commend you for still having a smile on your face, because those environments, and tell me what your thoughts are on this. I remember one day I was in the shelter and there was a hotel hiring, and I went down to the Marriott. I probably shouldn't have said the name, but when I went down to the Marriott and I applied for a position, and they're like, oh yeah, and I went back to the shelter and I was like, they're hiring, guys. They're hiring right there. You can walk there. That hotel, they're hiring. And like every one of them, not one person went down there for a job. They all looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, are you guys like just happy being here? Like, what the heck? Like, there's a chance, like, we could get a job. And like, everybody looked at me like I was an idiot. It was such a wild experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
But again, those environments, they're peppered with all kinds of drug addictions and mental health. And then some people are just flat out lazy. You just don't know. I mean, what was it like your experience? Like, how did you perceive like the others or the other people that were in there alongside of you?
So I think we're all wired very differently. And because I have made so many mistakes in my life and I carry a lot of, I don't want to say guilt because that's very counterproductive, but a lot of awareness that people only see what they see and they cannot understand fully what's going on in my head, which might not make sense at all to them, no matter how hard they try. I've kind of operated that way my whole life towards others. And so I tend to see people in shelters living with a sense of worthiness and helplessness and hopelessness, which is due to severe trauma and mental health concerns. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't want to be that person that says that people choose to be homeless or lazy, because I am sure that people have felt that way about me, and they didn't, and because they see the happy Jossette who models, who paints, who studies, who speaks up, but they don't know what's going on internally unless they've been extremely close to me, and that's a very limited amount of people. So I felt that everybody was fighting a battle of their own, that my duty was to try understanding with an understanding that I could never fully understand, and try to provide unconditional love, because sometimes that's all you can do.
Sure.
I'm very thankful because I had the right people, the emotional regulative energy that some people might not have had at certain times. But I've made my share of mistakes, and that's why I think I want to extend grace to everyone, because no matter how hard I try, I will never know what it feels to be them. That person
Exactly.
across me.
No,
Yeah.
you're right. And I could be a real cold bastard. And I say things
Some of us.
so lighthearted, but you're right. Every single person's got their own whatever it is. They've got their own narrative. They've got their own reasons, and you never truly know. And it could be, who knows? You don't truly know. You never have an idea. They could just be, and I've ran into the, being in and out of the shelters for some time. Every once in a while I'd be delightfully surprised. Other times I'd be like, wow, get away from that person. That's not, see people stabbed, with a fork, who knows, right? It's just being in those environments. I was 100% exposed to another side of life that I am thankful for that experience, just because I can carry it with me. And have a little piece of me that's like always curious. Like, I don't really know what's going on with them. You know what I mean? I may be
Yeah,
a little less benevolent than you are about it. I'm a little bit more
that's
skeptical.
okay.
Yeah. But that's just, that's just how it is. However, one thing I can agree with you on is that they all have their own story. There's something kind of thing going on with them. But that is such an interesting journey. So what's next on your action board?
What's next? I am going to publish 4 different books this week. They are ready to go. I'm working on edits, but I will do that. And I keep on reaching out to people. And if I don't find a producer, that's okay, because I'm learning how to be one myself, which is part of the journey. You never know when you're going to have enough tools and enough people, and you can just take that title with you. That learning experience is priceless, truly. So if you can't find it, you create it. That's my way to do it right now.
Sure. All right. Tell me more about these
Yeah.
books. What a self-published, what do we got? Like, because I mean, you have a
I'm gonna be
PhD. I don't know.
self-publishing just because, yeah, I couldn't find a publishing house yet, and I feel that it's a way to get out there until I find one. So one is of a spiritual nature. It's kind of based on my own experience, and then I crafted it around to make the story more interesting. One is a poetry book, and one is a children's book. I used to have a service dog called Milo, so I'm gonna get a book about my service dog out for little kids. And I have one who's more focused on my health journey, because that's all intertwined. But I want to reach different people, because I feel that one of my purpose in life is that I'm still very judgmental, Ryan, I have to say. And I want to overcome this. Politics is extremely divisive. And I still am not where I aspire to be, because I tend to be very emotional about certain stuff. And part of my growth is to want to reach out to people that think differently, so I can grow in purpose to not judge, and to try seeing how I can manage this world, this mess of a beautiful world.
Yeah.
But I'm light years away from it. So this is part of the learning, okay? Don't, I'm so judgmental still.
We do it, right? Like we can aspire to not do it, but it's that world. I don't think that's ever truly going to become an existence for any of us, right? So I don't cast any stones, right? And so 4 books, I love that, right? Because I feel like not like you're not doing a million other things to get into the different spaces that you desire to be into. But like, I think that when I had wrote my book, honestly, like as far as like an author work, right, not that great, right? It is my story. It is my story. And it took a lot of guts for me to, to organize myself and get the book out. But I will say this, that book has been a key into many, many, many places. Like it opens a lot of doors just because there's a certain amount of respect for somebody who took the time to write down, mine's about sobriety or whatever, but like, write down anything about themselves or about their service dog, Milo, whatever that is. People give respect to people who put out, literature in any form, right? And so I think that's awesome that you're doing that. So 4 books coming out this week, right?
Yeah, well, I think once you publish them, Amazon takes a little time, so they should be out between the 23rd and the end of the month.
Sure. Okay, well, look, I put everything black and white. Now, you have a lot of things to put in black and white to what I could get eyeballs on, but there's no shortage of noble causes and kind of artistic pursuits that you got going on, and I think that picking one of them would be hard for anybody, so you could choose all of them, but I'll have all of that lined up for everybody too. One last question, Jossette, where do we see Jossette this time next year? It's November 2026.
I'm gonna have a very nice place with a car, and I'm not gonna be on food stamps, and I'm gonna be very confidently advocating for what I believe in, helping people, hopefully passing the dream on.
Right. Okay. I feel like there's even more to it than that, but I
hope so.
For the sake of time, brevity is something that we can say it's good to be short and sweet. And so, that being said, this has been another episode of The Next Fix. I want to thank Jossette, and we'll see you on the next one, guys.
Thank you so much, Ryan.